Bonne nuit, mon ami. So pretty much being the vain cosmopolitan that I try to be, what I can do is a new intro / language every time, out of vanity, of course. But today, a lot to talk about. It has been long enough since coming back into the US, so I now feel enough of disdain, and I'm fully back into drudgery. So to be back on the regular stuff to complain about, and of course 626 26 degrees. Although the mashup of Feel So Close by Calvin Harris and Mine by Taylor Swift is pretty good and does go hard, actually, or at the very least feels nostalgic. So I suppose it's only so generalizable, but yeah, of course, this being the DMV, where there's not so much density and whatnot, and it's cold, so in general, right, there shouldn't be anybody out. But to make sure, we'll document some very generic single-family housing areas. Right. There's a great piece in a great website. It's probably one of my favorite article websites. It's not a newspaper, but it's called Works in Progress. It's really good. It's kind of new. Came out it started last year, or 2 years ago. But the content is super good, and they write genuinely interesting stuff. So they recently had a paper about why in the West there is so much down zoning that happened, and so pretty much down zoning happened when it benefited the interests of landowners / capital, and it didn't happen when it didn't. And so pretty much, effectively, for example, if real estate developers owned greenfield development, and that means that nothing has been built yet, then the landowners want density, because putting up an apartment building is the best way to get a return, not single family. But and of course, as Kamala Harris once said, you didn't fall a lot of a coconut tree. You exist in the context of everything that came before you. Which again, America's not ready for a true, for someone who actually knows any Marxist thought or any basic understanding. All right, but of course, if the suburb or if the town already exists, if the town or suburb already exists, of course there's the Geico headquarters or building. But if the town already exists and it's single family housing, right, and naturally people implicitly in the price you pay for real estate are the benefits, quote unquote, of location or having a front yard or being away from undesirable elements. So, and in those cases, right, the homeowners are the capital, and they don't want density, and so it doesn't happen. So it's yet another materialist W on how to see the world, or how history moves. So yet another W, but it's a great article, and so that is very interesting. That's the conclusion. And so pretty much, so the actual tangible takeaway is that once homeowners realize that their house will be worth so much more if they allow for density, if you just allow your house to become a 2-story, a 3-story, even if you don't change or rebuild your house or remodel your house, the fact that you can do it to zoning laws will increase your home value. And so the great endpoint was, so once homeowners realize all of the untapped value in their home, then what will happen? It's like, chat, if there's one thing NIMBY homeowners understand, it's a ruthless sense of financial maximization. So, of course, it's not necessarily intuitive for the American context, but it's a great article. But the nice thing, or the thing that made it stick out to me, wasn't about the actual zoning discussion, but was about the discussion of how cities not so long ago were so different. For example, in Paris, there's a photo of like 1910 of pretty much from the city's core, or like the city border to the outside, there being actual checkpoints to check goods, or basically customs checkpoints. There's also a way to pretty much segment labor and segment population, right? Because as it turns out, right, those worker guilds, just like a union, they have certain incentives to maximize the value of their labor, and so in the background of the photo, you could see little slums set up right outside the city's proper economic zone. So it's a very interesting photo, and it's just a reminder of the Great Line, which is very haunting. The past is a foreign country. Things work differently there, which is so haunting. And man, I feel that way so much sometimes about how much simpler life was in 2016. And of course you can say, oh, you were so much younger. You were... Gosh. You were 14 back then. Like, that's the point. And that's not a fair critique, because everybody 9 years ago was 9 years younger. So everybody has everybody has a fixed relationship to time, turns out. Even all of these single family housing owners have a fixed relationship to time. But just haunting, and again, like, you would never know if you look at Paris today. But the fact that, so it was very cool, I think rewarding to read that and see that photo, because A, it's factually true. I didn't know that. And then B, the legacy of that zoning structure has real impact today. And it's so fascinating to see the difference, how German cities were different to, say, British or French cities or Eastern European cities. Because it turns out, because of Bismarck and setting up a pseudo-Prussian welfare state, or just the fact that German city-states had much more state capacity. So German cities were much earlier to zoning, and much earlier to setting up zoning rules like setbacks and height things, which is very rhymey to what you hear about in the US. I do suppose parking requirements weren't a thing, but maybe that's a good anti-NIMBY argument. You sound like a Prussian bureaucrat, a Junker. You sound like a Junker, Mr. Chevy Chase man or gal. But it's all very, very abstract. And again, it's not going to add any value to my life. And so the joke is perennially, I would trade all of my knowledge. Yes, like I would trade all of my knowledge. If a genie popped up, I would say I would trade all of my knowledge of Turkish banks to go on one date. Well, I'll make that trade. And the genie will say, no, not good enough. I'll say, damn it. I'll trade up all my knowledge of Brazilian commodity producers. He'll see the pain it causes me. Let's say, I'll get you a coffee chat. Damn it. And then at some point I'll go down the tree and give up works in progress. So, but alas. Now I will say clearly, if I wake up so early on a Saturday and it's cold as it is now to do these things, I evidently somewhat enjoy doing these talks to the camera. It turns out, yeah, these are some of the things I talk about. It's not like come off as bitter or like loser behavior. I think hopefully, like A, somewhat tongue in cheek. B is just cathartic, and then C, I'm outside, man. I'm walking. I'm not chilling in the basement, you know. So it can't be that loser behavior, you know. So there's that. But yeah, it's so painful. I've started to rewatch the videos I've made in Argentina, walking around La Bombonera, right? A temple, a footballing temple. You're seeing like, oh my, it's literally, if you imagine, it's sort of a caricature of like boring place sex in black and white, and then beautiful, vivid, warm, sunny place in vivid, bright colors. And all I'm seeing, with a wistful smile that will slowly will quickly dissipate, just the blue and yellow of La Bombonera in the streets, and the Cais and Las Heras Park, and the 70-cent croissants. A different life is possible. Again, that's not the actual lived reality of someone who lives in Buenos Aires, but you only live once, and that's not my cars didn't get drawn to be a barrio chino, you know. So, but it's fun though. Again, like in that universe, would I be happier? Well, and then it comes down to, well, what causes happiness? And as you, the audience, you kind of know where this is going, right? What I want to whine about, but again, like the human brain is a miracle, and it's a miracle the human brain can process such a, or my brain at least, can process going from that beautiful spring in a wonderful city. Again, world class, rough parts, very rough parts, but you know, everything is distribution, and you just roll the dice and walk around. But to go from that to DC, horrible experience. And again, I made it to comment so many times, but it just shows how lacking DC is in so many critical regards. I just was, well, I just suppose that's the American trade-off fully in a nutshell. Material prosperity and comfort, but you're lacking a lot of, not personality, although DC is lacking personality, but every cities have personality, so it's not that. Okay, Chris Arda said it better, but Armenian market, let's go. Yeah, who are the favorite ethnic groups of DC? You got the little Little shout outs to snub the nose at the autocrats. I wonder. But yeah, so there was a nice Red Scare Pod subreddit post the other day. Again, like it's the only subreddit I look at. It's somewhat unique and interesting stuff. And calling people fat and fat shaming is useful for my loose GLP-1 ideas. For the days where where I'm too respectful of women to use them as objects for the GLP-1, the mental GLP-1 brain chemistry experiment or process. But so the post is pretty much, we've talked about this before, where you see a pretty girl and you don't like, you're just not the Looney Tunes getting riled up. It's just you just feel a little bit of emptiness or sadness or melancholy. And I think, again, like the reason for that is effectively you see the pretty girl and it just reminds you of your inadequacies, right? Your inadequacies mean that you've got zero shot with her. Now, of course, it's not true positive mindset, blah blah blah. But like, effectively, for all intents and purposes, you are very out of the money. Or I say you to avoid directing it at me, but I'm talking to you to camera. So maybe you to camera could have a parasocial relationship or whatnot. So I'll stick with you. So I'm not deflecting out of insecurity. But again, that is functionally what it is. Right? It's like it is, you see the cute girl, and then you know that you've got no chance, or you're not the one catching her eye. It's like, again, nothing bad or wrong again. You know. Everything in life's a distribution. I'm not gonna pull it out because it's cold. My hands are kind of comfy where they are. But there's a great, out of all places, under a looks maxing TikTok, there was a strangely thoughtful comment. Very genuinely, I found it reflective and interesting about something along the lines of, so of course the looks maxing community. Now, if you Google looks maxing, it sounds very bad. So I think like the Google search of looks maxing is a bit harsh, in the same way how if you Google masochist, it comes off as super sexual. But I always view masochist as like, yeah, like you're not. Oh, okay, I do see why, but I use masochist not in a sexual sense, because I wouldn't know what I'm talking about, but in the sense that like you'll accept, you have pain tolerance, you know, you're not, or it's like self-loathing. Like, yeah, I view masochist as self-loathing, basically, as a proxy. But under a looks maxing, and again, like looks maxing, right? The entire point of it, which again on face value makes sense, is right that if you look better, like that makes you more valuable. Or not more valuable, but it just like if you're more attractive, you are more attractive, right? Which means that you're more interesting to girls. You're better positioned. Like people treat you nicer, right? And the point is then then there are steps you can take to look better. And so in that sense, if anything, it's just Gen Z self-help, which is 100% based and valid. Well, I don't know. again, on the face of it, very not controversial, I feel. But anyways, it can be a bit toxic, and I just suppose it's only fair for guys, 15 years after Instagram, for looks maxing TikToks to cause guys to feel the same way teenage girls have felt for millennia. So the wonders of the 21st century are truly upon us in this gilded age. But the comments can be kind of toxic, of just people spamming like brutal and black pill and all of that. But there's one comment which I found straight again, like the guy's username was some like, of course, you know, like some like generic slop username. But I found, the comment was actually good, and it was something along the lines of, like, don't feel that way. Yes, again, it was seriously poetic. I don't know, like, there's no way, like, it was some AI comment thing. So some kid put on his philosopher hat, and they get should I take it off? Well, I guess I do need to figure out where in the generic suburb, in the generic rows of houses that have minimal personality. And again, it's a simple fact that if you're allowed to have a shop, like the simple change of just allowing people to have a shop at their house, like just have like a garage coffee shop, like it's your domicile. You know, like if that simple fact was allowed, like these neighborhoods would be so much more interesting and actually have some personality and actually not be consumerist temples. But of course, can't have nice things. Can't have nice things in the US, can ya? No, sir. Nice things are bad and not allowed. No, not in the US. Don't have to kill for nice things unless you're rich, in which case you can go to a nice neighborhood. Gosh, where would I have put it? I know I copied it because I found it, again, genuinely charming. Okay, and also part of the Looks Max community is kind of like the impact of genetics and kind of impacting your attractiveness, which again isn't incorrect per se. Okay. But yeah, so guy's username is the dog from Las Vegas. Yes, it's jeans. Yes, it's brutal, but that's life. Life is absurd, and yes, good looks helps. Everyone knows. But dwelling on it will make you feel better. Life is a game of dice after all. Like damn, dogs from Las Vegas. That is extremely pensive. And actually, again, but life is a game of dice. Bro, what teenager, what little kid is writing that? Dude, that is such a good, oh my gosh. I gotta remember, man. Life is a game of dice. I liked it. Bro, generally, if I heard a kid say that to me, dog, that kid's going places. But again, I think that's, at the end of the day, right? You couldn't, rolling the dice. That's a good line, right? But you only get one. Yeah, like the dice has already been rolled. You know, now you got to play. But yes, it's brutal. but it's no good to beat yourself up about it. We should all be more like dogs from Las Vegas, shouldn't we? Of course, the implication about me knowing about looks maxing stuff tells you, the audience, that I'm somewhat, my TikTok feed is, it is actually somewhat, well, it is actually funny if you think about it, right? Because if you only have so much advertising space, or if you only have so much content consumption, right? Like, I'm only using TikTok for 5 minutes of the day before going to bed, right? And so if my 5 minutes before was like 80% thirst traps and then 20% variety stuff, and now it's become like 20% looks maxing, 20% variety stuff, then my previously 60% of thirst trapping consumption has gone down. Because presumably I would prefer more of the thirst trapping content, presumably. Although the algorithm is the most effective truth-seeking mechanism, then implicitly it's kind of telling you that looks maxing is somehow more interesting and desirable for my consumption than thirst traps from insert TikTok model XYZ. Or again, like we've talked about one of those TikTok Instagram models before, down in one of the Anacostia videos. So it's not foreign, but yeah, so that is the actual implication of that outcome. But again, so I just at that point, so you see a cute girl, and like, you know you have no shot. But the point is, I don't want to come as like defeatist or whatnot. And so I don't think that's the goal, or that's certainly not the attitude of such the gung-ho, proactive, take the bull by its horns, proactive, high agency guy that I am, of course. But I do think that there are some hills that are too high for you to grasp. I certainly think attractiveness is, it's not, well, there are most things in life you can just work hard at, and you can reach the minimum required threshold, right? Like, if you're not naturally gifted at math, you can work hard, you can study hard. You're not naturally a gifted runner, you can run a lot and improve your capacity, right? But something like attractiveness, like, you can't, you know, like, there's a very obvious upper bound, you know. And then, like, I do find, given my complaints about buccal fat surgery, I'm certainly in no position to, I have no desire to be a hypocrite on this regard. Yeah. Again, I do view complaining about buccal fat surgery to be a very effeminate thing to do, but ironically enough, like, you're critiquing the attractiveness of a woman who was presumably more attractive before she made her cheeks very slim, and so I don't know. Is that effeminate? If it's actually very male gazy, I don't know. But why, Sophie Thatcher? Why? But yeah. So again, I do suppose, and again with the entire agency point, it's, there's a conundrum somewhere. I'm not sure what the holistic answer would be, but yeah, so you see a cute, so pretty much a recap. See a cute girl, and then you just feel like you don't feel you're not feeling more young. You're just feeling melancholic and right because you know that you've got no shot. Again, if today we're feeling, today I feel very materialist. Now I see the world, and I presume right if hate will not make us great. Well, that's taught me about me, me and my in this fun topic. But so materialist lens, right? Conceptually, okay, like or it is. It's not conceptually. Like it is very literally. If there are only so many women in the world, then naturally there's only so much. There's a fixed amount of female attention, effectively, or literally. Again, you know, I don't judge how zero sum you see the world. You know, live, laugh, love, and all that. You know, but if there is a fixed amount of female attention, I have some time to kill. Let's walk back this way, because as hungry as I am, I do want to justify the fixed cost of walking to the subway station, and like these pants are just my. I guess my camera can't show my pants, but my pants are just whatever chinos I wear to work, which are very slim, and so I'm not wearing a lot underneath, so everything is frozen down there. So I'm justifying my masochistic tendencies by amortizing the fixed cost of freezing and walking, with the joy of talking to the camera and helping train a future Gemini model. And I will say, the new image generation on Gemini, it is impressive the outputs you can make. Of course, the joke is all of these down bad, horny AI guys discovered Gemini Nano, and pretty much just doing JSON, where do the parentheses and they try to specify those things. And it turns out waist thin, cute face, whatever sexual features is like, yeah, I see the AI consumer adoption picking up steam. It's so funny when people were freaking out or being judgmental of Sam Altman saying that OpenAI is going to offer erotica. Like he's not being honest about it. And again, the company shouldn't tell you what you can or can't do, right? Anyways, so it is funny that for Google of all companies, which Google of course has made Gemini effectively very stupid, very, very stupid. I can't say my true feeling. I can't say the word that says my true feeling on the matter, but so it is funny that for Google has created the pure create cute girl AI girl slop. But yeah, so materialist lens, there is a fixed amount of female attention that exists in the world, and implicitly, right, and you can loosely map the allocation of attention, or what characteristics would garner more of that fixed amount of attention. I don't really want to tell you what makes sense or not. I think the answer is we're not talking rocket science answers, right? Like, presumably, like, if you're more attractive, more successful, more outgoing, you garner more attention, right? But the point is, right, that the attention, it's like it's not a commodity. And again, I like when people talk about like sex work, I think, and how sex work is liberating. I do think, yeah, and not that I disagree with not allowing it, but you are effectively commoditizing the woman's body. And I suppose that already happens implicitly, right? Like the fact that if you're like the cute girls tend to work at higher paying like retail jobs or service jobs, again, right? Because again, that makes sense. But yeah, I guess the Puritan influence, but yeah, or making it so explicit, or at least not being honest about how explicit you're making it, is where I draw the issue. Leave it to me to be the moral arbiter, ain't I, of high standards, right? But that's pretty much right. So effectively, female attention, you can only have so much of it. And so it's just like, if you have more money and I have less money, that's kind of society saying that that's a nice little ornament. Right, it's like this joke of like, like money is a social credit system, right? Like, you do something the government doesn't like, government gives you a fine. That is literally what a social credit system, quote unquote, does. So it's very funny to hear accusations tossed out, right? But again, sort of, right, like, if you have commodity and there's only so much money, insert Austrian economics guy complaining, right? Conceptually, it's a fixed supply thing. It's finite. It's the same way that if guy X has more money than me, that implies that guy X is effectively like more valuable or desirable or insert whatever. And conversely, again, if you use the metaphor in the materialist lens, which I think works, right? Toss it in for female attention. I think, again, like, to you, the audience, or at the very least, female attention is not so plentiful that that all guys aren't drowning in female attention, right? Although maybe you are. And maybe that's where got to time the subway properly, given the single tracking today. We got 15 minutes to kill. Right. So pretty much that's the point. I think it's empirically obvious that female attention is not evenly distributed, and so again, implicitly, it's just another way of saying, right, that But again, the other things, right, is probably the same way. Most finite resources it's good to have more of the finite resource than less. And so naturally, like, it's good to have more female attention than less, implicitly, right? But of course, you don't have more female attention. You are on the lower end of the distribution. And it's, it's the tedium of knowing that no other reality than this one is possible. But yeah, again, materialism explains everything, including including effectively all the ills of the 21st century, including me and the difficulties and things I worry about. So, insert sad face. Now, of course, the really funny joke would be, of course, it's died down a bit, but a couple of months ago, with Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson and their new book, Abundance, and everybody's talking about, well, we need to talk about abundance. And in DC being the shitlib city that it is, everybody's like that naturally grabbed everybody's attention. Like, we need to talk about abundance, bro. Abundance. You know? And all I can say to that is, like, again, like, on the face of it, yes, but you know it's never going to happen because, again, like, if everything's materials, like, the benefits of abundance, like, the political motive for it doesn't affect the people who have the most influence, right? Like, literally, right? Again, I somehow connect the dots on these walks, but, right, the Works in Progress article, it mentioned, right, you have suburbs that are exclusive, right? And those suburbs, naturally, because they're homogenous in terms of economic status, they create, like, it's very hard, right, if you're the mayor of that suburb to go against your constituents, right? And it's also in the U.S. where it's so easy, if you're rich, to avoid the issues. It's a classic critique of the suburb liberal who doesn't face the crime issues that people in the city deal with. So the suburb liberal isn't in support of tougher policies on crime, right? So it's literally that, right? Like people who are more influential politically probably own a house, so they don't feel the crushing supply crunch, and they benefit from the supply crunch with their property values, right? So again, it's just it's not a principal agent problem, but it's just a reality of the American political system, of the vibrant democracy, right? The vibrant democracy that is seemingly under threat for reasons. Hashtag trademark. Hashtag trademark watermark. But, so with that, all I'm going to say is the real abundance agenda that I can get behind. So the point is, right, but abundance, right, building more housing. I do buy the argument that actually most problems can be traced back to housing not being as plentiful. I do accept that argument. I wholeheartedly. I genuinely accept the argument. I think A, it makes for great articles, and B, I think it makes sense. So if you accept that premise, that the lack of housing is the ill to a lot of things, I think the ever ill is the fact that you've got a lot of single guys. And so, of course, like so the point is, the true second policy priority of the abundance agenda should be state mandated girlfriends. Again, tongue in cheek, and that's a joke, of course, or that's something like the off-right joke. But again, right, it just gets up to, like, if you've accurately diagnosed one supply crunch as a cause of many social ills, then implicitly so is this. So you're just being logically consistent with the argument. Unfortunately, that abundance agenda will never get passed for obvious reasons, but it's the line of thinking that works. And second, if you want to get the male vote out, Hey, not a bad idea, right? Of course, the issue is that it's not a winning proposition probably for women, and women are likely the more important electorate. So, alas, but it's if the joy of life is fantasizing about things and what could be, then I certainly. That's all right. Well, I guess that's what he walks it for, right? Because, again, I've earned it. I'm freezing. I've earned the right to be wistful about stuff. And that's certainly the case about the state-mandated girlfriend political agenda. So, anyways, thanks for watching. Argentina, Buenos Aires, is so much better than this dreary reality, but here we are. So thanks for watching.